Hello everyone. I'm glad to see you on my channel. The story I'm going to tell you today is pure. It is true that all the bad things that happen in life happen for a reason. It is said that we can appreciate the good things, the things when they happen to us. I hope you enjoy this story. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Jacob sighed with satisfaction that he had finally left the walls of the orphanage. He was not offended by the attitude of the staff of this institution to himself, as both educators and teachers behaved correctly to the pupils of the orphanage. But the young man was eager to start living on his own, and moreover, he was given a one-room apartment by the state, albeit on the outskirts of the city. Jacob knew his goal in life. He wanted to become an automobile mechanic. He had already chosen this profession since childhood, and the kindergarten teacher, Leslie, prophesied it to him. From the woman, the guy had learned how he got to the boarding school at the age of 6. She told him when Jacob asked her when he was in 5th grade, "Leslie, you treat me very well. Not only I notice it, but also my other peers. But I have a question for you. Let me ask you and you answer it, please, but only honestly, please, but only honestly." You straight up discouraged me at this point, but okay. "Let's go with your questions," said the woman. "I don't remember much from my early childhood, but I know that I had a mom and dad. But why did I end up in an orphanage if I had parents? Did they abandon me?" the boy said. Leslie looked sadly at the orphanage pupil. Then she sighed sorrowfully, for she herself had received Jacob that day. She stroked the boy's head and said softly, "I knew you would come to me with this question someday. And I guess this day has come. I won't keep anything from you." She paused and looked at Jacob with an attentive gaze, and when she saw Jacob's serious expression, she continued, "Your parents loved you very much, as did your grandmother on your mother's side. You had no other relatives, unfortunately. Everything happened when you were 6 years old. You were in the hospital with an inflammation of the ear, and like all children, when you got better, pranked with peers. And that's when you had a fight with a boy, and the boy pushed you, and you fell down the stairs and broke your leg. That's when your parents got the call about the accident. Mom and Dad and your grandmother immediately went to the hospital, as they were very worried about you. But they did not get there in time because they had an accident in their car. Father and Mother died at the scene, but your grandmother was still in the hospital for about a week, but was in a coma. However, she also did not manage to survive. She died without regaining consciousness. You went from one hospital to another with a fracture, and then you were placed in an orphanage here because you had no other relatives, as I said earlier. That's how you ended up here. So never think that your parents abandoned you. They loved you very much, and as soon as they found out about your fracture, they rushed to you, but the accident stopped your meeting forever." The boy sat quietly for a while after his teacher's story, and then he cried involuntarily. Leslie pulled Jacob to her and said softly, "I know it's hard for you to understand, but you're a strong boy like your father, and you'll get through this. What do you know about my dad?" "You've never even met them," Jacob said, wiping away tears with his fist. "I didn't know them in my lifetime, and you're right about that. But once you were in the orphanage, I made some inquiries about your family. I learned a lot of positive things about your mom and dad, and that your dad was into cars. He loved to tinker with engines, and your dad worked as an auto mechanic. I guess you got your dad's passion for cars. Look at you. You try to spend all your free time in the garage at our head shopkeeper," said the woman, and at the same moment involuntarily laughed, and then added, "Zavkos Jordan already calls you a personal mechanic of his car." The boy, hearing these words, smiled, because he was really trying to get closer to the car of the head shopkeeper under a plausible pretext. And then the boy said, "When I grow up, I will definitely work like my dad is a car mechanic. He and my mom will be proud of me in heaven." "You are a good boy and you will do well," said the teacher of the orphanage. "Jacob is already settling in a small one-room apartment. The only furniture he has is a sofa Leslie, a bulky old chiffonier, a kitchen table, and 2 stools. However, this circumstance does not embarrass the young man at all. He perfectly understands that he will be able to buy furniture and other necessary things in the near future. For himself, the guy decided that the very first purchase will be a TV set. Soon Jacob entered college to become an auto mechanic. And at first the guy realized that if before he thought that it would be easy to acquire the necessary things, then now his opinion has changed dramatically. The scholarship that the young man received in college was not even enough for a living wage. Jacob realized that he had two options for survival: to steal or to find a part-time job. He dismissed the first option because he had decided that he would never take someone else's money. But the second method was closer to working. But there were some pitfalls here too, such as the small choice of where to get a job without special education. Jacob went for a week to companies to get a part-time job in the evening, but everywhere he received a refusal. The boy was ready to take any job, as he sometimes had no money even for bread. The young man was in despair, as he did not know how to get out of the situation with no money. However, the boy was lucky he was returning home after an unsuccessful job hunt. Jacob wandered down the sidewalk and thought that today he would have black bread and doshirak, noodles for dinner again. He was distracted from his sad thoughts by a man's shout. A stranger shouted to him, "Hey kid, help me push the car." Jacob walked over to the driver and said, "Doesn't start?" "No. I couldn't get the car a couple of meters to the service station, and the car just stopped," the stranger said. "Let me take a look," Jacob said. "Well, take a look. I'm going to the service station because the car is really bad, and I'm not good at this," the man said. Jacob opened the hood leisurely, then asked the driver for the key, screwed something on, and offered the stranger a chance to start the car. The man complied and was surprised when the car started. The stranger got out of the car and said, "You are a smart guy. You should work at a service station." "Who will take me there? I'm only in my first year of auto mechanic training," Jacob said sadly. "Jump in the car. We'll go to the service station, and a friend of mine works there, and I'll recommend you to him. I won't promise anything, though. But I think he needs such good guys," the stranger said. Soon Jacob was talking to Stan, the owner of the service station. The man asked Jacob a lot of questions, and then he said, "I see you're good with cars, and I need competent technicians. I'll hire you, and you can come here after your studies. But I warn you right away that your earnings will be very meager. All the same, you realize that you have a part-time job, and education is not yet. Here you will graduate from college, and then I'll take officially with all the consequences. If, of course, you will not be a show. What do you think of my offer?" "I agree," Jacob said, hiding his glee. "Okay then, I'll see you tomorrow." And without tardiness, the service station boss said with a smile. The next day, the boy started working at Stan's place. Jacob went to college during the day and worked part-time at the service station in the evening. The young man was pleased that now he had an additional source of income and the most real practice in the automobile industry. Time flew by. When there were 6 months left before graduating from college, the guy met a girl, Natalie. Passionate feelings broke out between the young people. Jacob was happy because he believed that he had met the one and only chosen one. Their relationship developed rapidly, and after graduating from college, the guy made an offer of marriage to Natalie. The girl responded with consent, but at the same time said, "I agree to marry you, but only after you serve in the army. We have to test our relationship to see if we can make it work. A year apart is not a long time for lovers." "All right, whatever you say. Your word is law," the guy said tenderly and kissed his beloved. Soon the boy left for the army. Jacob took moments to call his beloved, but not very often. The young man dreamed of returning soon and creating a family with his favorite girl. However, his dreams were not destined to come true. Before the demobile was a couple of months away, as he received a text message from his beloved, in which it was written, "I'm sorry, but I fell in love with someone else. He can give me more in life than you can offer." Do not take offense at these words, but it is true, and you yourself know about it. I didn't mean to offend you with this statement, Just understand me right. Please, please don't bother me anymore. We have different roads now. And don't take offense at me." Initially, the young man didn't believe the message and thought that Natalie just wanted to check on him. Jacob called the girl and immediately realized that the chosen one had blacklisted him in her phone. The guy couldn't believe that Natalie was able to just cross everything off like that and give up on the relationship. Soon Jacob came home after the army and immediately went to his beloved to talk. It wasn't until he approached Natalie's house that he saw her holding hands with a young man. Jacob was also struck by the fact that Leslie had only announced the breakup a couple months ago, even though she'd been seeing another guy for a long time, and her rounded belly showed it. Jacob silently swallowed the resentment, the bitterness. He didn't want to talk to his former lover, and there was nothing to talk about in Jacob's opinion. He was depressed that his favorite girl had betrayed him so badly, and he tried to find an excuse for Natalie, but he couldn't. Jacob even blamed himself for going to the army and leaving his girlfriend alone. The young man could not find a place that his beloved at the moment is embraced not by him, but by another man. To get rid of his thoughts about Natalie's betrayal, Jacob went to work in the same service station where he worked before the army. Stan Alexandrovich gladly took the guy to his work, as Jacob was on a good account in his time. The young man tried to stay as long as possible at the service station, as only here he could distract himself from thoughts of his former lover. A year passed as Jacob came from the service and worked for Stan. His co-workers didn't understand why such a handsome young man didn't have a girlfriend. They often asked him the question with a joke, "You're not into boys, are you?" "Stupid questions," Jacob answered in all seriousness. "Not stupid at all. You seem to be a nice guy, and some customers often ask about you, and we do not know what to say in answer," said one of the employees of the service station. "And do not spread about me at all. If the ladies are interested in information about me, let them contact me directly," the young man said. Jacob was often angry after such attacks from the service station employees, and he didn't like being the object of jokes about his personal relationships with the girls. The guy was just beginning to move away from his feelings for Natalie and did not want to start new relationships with girls. However, despite Jacob's wishes, fate gave him a surprise. The young man unexpectedly fell in love with a girl who came with her friend to repair a foreign car. The acquaintance happened quite by accident. The girl approached Jacob. "I need a smart worker who knows cars well." "We all have people working here who know a lot about cars," Jacob replied. "And even you, such a good-looking man, also know a lot about cars." The girl said flirtatiously and looked at the boy defiantly. Jacob was embarrassed by the look, but he answered, "I can't praise myself, but since I work here, I guess it's not easy. My name is Julianne, and my friend Maria has a bad motor," or something like that, but I can't be sure. I don't know the ins and outs of it. I have a big request to help my friend as soon as possible. "Is that within your power?" she said. "My name is Jacob. I can't answer your question so quickly because I need to inspect the car. There's a cozy cafe nearby, so you and your friend can spend some time there while we do a diagnostic," Jacob said, and headed toward Maria's car. He felt Julianne watching him intently. He wanted to turn to her and say something nice, but he suppressed the urge. Friends soon left the service station for the time being on Jacob's advice, and the young man began to inspect Maria's car. As he did his work, he kept thinking about Julianne. He clearly realized that after Natalie had left him, he was paying attention to the girl for the first time. After a while, the girls returned to the service station, where Jacob informed them of the car's problems and told them how many days the car would be repaired. They listened to the guy and nodded in approval. They were about to leave the shop when Julianne suddenly turned to Jacob. "You're a good-looking guy, but I think you're shy. Write down my phone number and call me at your leisure." And then she dictated the numbers to the young man. Jacob was a little confused after Julianne's words, but he wrote down the number. After the two girls left, he kept thinking about his new acquaintance. Jacob imagined calling Julianne, but he couldn't figure out how to start a conversation on the phone. He mentally composed phrases that he wanted to say to the girl. But at the same moment he dismissed them because they seemed too trivial. As soon as the workday was over, Jacob walked home, and his thoughts were again occupied with his new acquaintance. He scolded himself repeatedly for thinking only of Julianne. But he couldn't help it. Coming home, the guy felt irritated with himself that he could not get rid of thoughts about the girl. That's when Jacob decided to call Juliana. He dialed the number, and as soon as he heard the melodious female voice, he said excitedly, "Hello, this is Jacob. I met you at the service station today. You and your friend brought your car in for repair. I recognize you, Jacob. You didn't have the nerve to call me, did you?" "I didn't think you'd dare to do it," she said with a laugh. "I'm not as shy as you think I am," the boy said shyly. "What are you saying?" Julianne laughed and continued, "You are even now embarrassed, and do not dare to deceive me. Look, let's make a deal that you're going to yell at the older people. Not me. Now tell me, what do you intend to offer me now?" "What do you mean, offer?" Jacob answered the question with a question. "You're an asshole. Didn't you just call to hear my voice? Don't you want to invite me to a cafe or a walk or a nightclub or something like that? I don't go to night bars. But in a cafe or for a walk it is possible. But let's decide what you want to do," the guy said. Julianne laughed and named the meeting place and time and warned him that she wouldn't tolerate any tardiness on his part. Jacob vowed to be there at the appointed hour. After this call, the young man happily began to prepare for the upcoming meeting. After a while, he was waiting with a bouquet of flowers for his new acquaintance. He immediately recognized the girl among the passers by her red hair, which was beautifully arranged on her head. Jacob hurried towards Juliana, and as soon as the man was on par with Juliana, he said, "Here you go. I hope you like roses. See, I'm not late, and I actually think it's disrespectful to be late for a first date. Thanks for the bouquet. Let's go to the cafe that's right around the corner. I often go there with a friend. There is not bad cooking. Though. The prices are a little high. But I hope it will not embarrass you too much," said the girl. "Don't worry about finances," the guy said, though he was a little worried because he didn't have much money with him. Soon the young men were sitting in the cafe talking to each other. Initially, Jacob told about himself, and then the girl told about herself. Jacob learned from Julianne's story that she was about to turn 23 and worked for her father as a sales manager. She has a younger sister, Julia. Of her parents, only her father works, and her mother is a housewife. Juliana also said that she likes to travel and has been abroad several times. The guy listened attentively to the girl and noted that the new acquaintance is from a well-to-do family and obviously likes to live in prosperity. Meanwhile, Juliana continued to talk about herself, and only after a while, the girl suddenly caught up and said, "Why are you always silent?" "So I'm listening to you," answered the guy, smiling. "Well, I almost told everything about me. And now, come on, entertain me coquettishly," said the girl. "How can I entertain you?" Jacob asked, puzzled. "You're not exactly out of this world. How are you going to woo a girl?" "They call you Jacob because you're clumsy," Julianne said with a hint of irritation. "Wait a minute to pout your pretty lips. I'm just a little embarrassed by you, or rather by your beauty, and I can't believe you're sitting at the same table with me. Let me tell you funny stories that have been in my life," said the guy. "Come on. But don't forget to give me compliments," Julianne said and fixed her red curl. The couple sat in the cafe for a couple of hours, and then the young people walked around the city. Toward 11 p.m., the girl asked to walk her home. When they came to the entrance of Juliana, she asked the guy, "Say, do you have a car?" "I don't have a car," Jacob answered. "But you work at a service station. What do you mean you don't have personal transportation?" "I haven't owned a car yet. All in good time, as they say. Washington wasn't built right away," Jacob said. Then they said goodbye, and the boy went home. Jacob thought about the girl as he walked, wishing he could see her again or hear her voice. On a momentary impulse, he called Julianne. She picked up the phone and asked in surprise what the purpose of the call was. Jacob answered bluntly that he wanted to hear her voice again. Julianne laughed and said, "You're really not as shy as I thought you were at first. Don't worry, you and I are only apart until tomorrow. True, I did not like walking because I was used to my car, but it is now taken by my father temporarily. His car is in repair, but it's nothing temporary. We'll go for a ride soon if you don't bore me." The guy said in all seriousness, and then wished the girl good night and disconnected the connection. The next day, the couple met again. They went to the movie theater to watch a thriller, and then went for a walk. The girl at this time told the guy about her plans for the future. Julianne dreamed of opening her own restaurant in the future. Jacob was extremely surprised by the desire of the interlocutor, so he asked her, "Are you sure of your abilities?" The restaurant business is the shark's tooth business, because there are too many competitors. You look at how we have in the city that one cafe will open, and after a while look, there is already a new owner. "I'm sure of myself," the girl said passionately and continued. "Just need to know the strategy, how to conduct their business. Do not forget, my father is a major entrepreneur, which means that I have a personal mentor." "Perhaps you are right, and thoughtfully," said the guy. The young people began to meet almost every day from then on. After a week of dating, Jacob invited her to his house because he wanted to confess his feelings to Julianne. On this occasion, the man baked chicken legs in the oven and on the side dish prepared mashed potatoes. He put a lot of candles in the room to create a romantic atmosphere. He wanted his beloved to appreciate his efforts. As soon as she entered Jacob's apartment, she looked around carefully and then said thoughtfully, "What a place you have here. I can tell you don't have anyone visiting. Come on, let's get me some food because you bragged to me that you had prepared a great dinner in my honor. How can there be women when I've been seeing you, however briefly? And if you are about the scanty furnishings, I live to the extent of my finances, because I do not have a rich father," said the landlord. "Was that a reproach to me about my father?" the girl asked unhappily. "Sorry, it just came out. But you should also realize that I am not a moneybag. I work as an auto mechanic and do not shovel money," said the man. "Forget it. Are you going to feed me?" The guest said, "Sure, come on. Find yourself a comfortable place," said the guy. And soon it was time for dinner. Jacob watched the girl as she carefully nibbled the crumbs off a piece of bread. The girl noticed his gaze and asked with a smile why he was watching her. Jacob answered honestly that he was admiring Julianne at the moment. The girl laughed when she heard this and said, "Maybe you're still in love with me. Why don't you declare your love for me? You're right on the money. I specifically invited you to my place and tried to create a romantic atmosphere, but my efforts were not appreciated because you called my place a den. But that's not the point. I wanted to tell you that." Jacob paused and looked at her seriously, and then he said, "Julianne, I want to tell you something. Julianne, I want to tell you that I fell in love with you at first sight. You probably won't believe me, but it's really true. I wake up thinking about you, and I fall asleep the same way. I think about you at work, too. And the guys at the service station have told me that my personality has been in the clouds lately." Jacob stopped talking and looked at the girl expectantly. The young man didn't understand what he was expecting at this moment from the girl he had chosen. Julianne sat pensively, her eyes staring at the floor after his declaration of love. The girl was silent for a few minutes, and then she spoke. "I also liked you still there at the service station. But I cannot say with certainty that I fell in love, because I have not experienced this feeling yet. Maybe I love you too, but I won't say. But tell me, why did you tell me all that?" "I wanted you to know that I cared about you," he said quietly, and walked over to the girl. The man leaned toward Julianne and then nestled his lips against hers. The girl didn't push him away, and then Jacob began to kiss her face tenderly. That day, Julianne stayed overnight at Jacob's house. The young people made love and fell asleep only in the morning. The first to wake up was the owner of the apartment. He gently looked at his beloved, who was still sleeping a serene sleep. The guy was glad that today was a day off and did not have to wake up his beloved. The man went to the kitchen to make coffee. When the fragrant drink was ready, Jacob wondered what to bring the mugs on. After all, he did not have a tray. The guy decided to use a cutting board for this. When the owner of the apartment entered the room, he saw that the chosen one had already woken up and was sipping languidly. The guy came up and wished the girl a good morning and then offered to taste a fragrant drink. Julianne took the mug from Jacob's hands and sniffed the coffee, then said crankily, "It's just instant coffee from a can. I don't like it, and if I drink it, it's only on special occasions. I prefer coffee brewed in a turbo." Apparently, for you today is that exceptional case, because I don't have a turbo, so you'll have to make do with what I have. Jacob said with a smile, "I'll have to drink this stuff. Remember, though, I like my coffee brewed in a pot," he said. Julianne spent the rest of the day at Jacob's house and then went home. The boy walked her to the driveway, and when they parted, he said that he had had a good time that night and wished that it had been like that for the rest of their lives. Julianne looked at Jacob in surprise and said thoughtfully, "You said that as if you were proposing marriage. Why wouldn't I? We're good together, and you won't deny it. I want you by my side as my wife," Jacob said. "Did you think of that now, or had you been planning it for a long time? I mean, when you found out I was the daughter of wealthy parents. You want to be my husband because my father is a businessman. Didn't I get that right?" she said with a grin. "How could you think that about me? I didn't expect that from you. I offer you sincerely and from the bottom of my heart to be my wife, and I don't need your father's money because I've lived before," Jacob said sadly, adding casually, "All right, think what you want to think. But if that's what you think of me, I feel sorry for you. I've seen you off, and now I'm out of here." And with those words, the man turned and walked away. He was angry at this point. Jacob had not expected to hear this line from his beloved. When he got home, he went into the bathroom to take a shower. The next morning, Jacob got up with a gloomy mood and went to work. The man kept analyzing yesterday's conversation with his lover. And when the phone rang, the guy was sincerely surprised that Julianne was the first to call. The girl said that tonight she would come to him for a conversation. Jacob replied that he would look forward to her coming. In the evening, they sat in Jacob's apartment. Julianne was the first to speak. She apologized for what she had said last night. The man nodded in response, then walked over to her and spoke softly. "So will you marry me? It's not that simple. My father will not understand my choice. He believes that money should go to money. Well, to put it simply, he will consider you not equal to me," quietly muttered the girl. "Wait, do you mean to say that your father will be most important, not the happiness of his daughter, but a suitable party for marriage? I understood the meaning of your words correctly, didn't I?" the man said in astonishment. "In principle, you have interpreted everything correctly," Julianne replied. "And wait again. Okay, this is your father's point of view, and you yourself, what do you think? Do you too only need a wealthy man to marry?" "I understand that you don't care at all about your own feelings," the boy said quietly. "Don't push me. I don't think so. I spoke for my father. You know very well that I'm fine with you and I don't want to break up. Maybe we should just wait for the registry office because many couples live in a civil marriage, and we can try the same. Yes, I'm not against it. But you yourself, you will live with me, and your father will want to know with whom his daughter lives. He'll know the truth about me, and then what? Dad's going to start telling you that I'm not the man for you. This isn't even about your father. It's about how you feel about me, what you're capable of doing for me," Jacob said with pressure. "Okay, let's save that conversation for later. I'll tell you that I want to be your lawfully wedded wife, and I'll try to talk to my mother first and then my father. But I already know what Dad's going to say." "Okay, that's it. Better go kiss me," the girl said. Julianne actually talked to her parents about it the next day. She told them that she had a fiancé who was going to meet them. When the head of the family, Anthony, learned that the future so-called son-in-law works as an auto mechanic, He laughed. The man immediately informed his daughter that he would not help Juliana with a single ruble if she married this guy. The girl tried to prove to her father that Jacob was a good man, but Anthony did not want to hear anything more on the subject. He even told his daughter not to dare to bring her boyfriend to their home. Juliana, after talking to her dad, was discouraged and in the evening told Jacob everything. The guy asked his lover not to be upset and suggested to the girl, "Let me talk to your father myself. I think we'll find common ground. I don't want to disappoint you, but you don't know my dad. He's the kind of man who, if he's stubborn, he'll be forever," Julianne said. "It's worth a try. Isn't that what they say? I'm gonna try." "How did your mom react?" Jacob said. "She didn't say anything. My mom doesn't decide anything in our family. My father always has the last word," Jacob said. A couple days later, Jacob arrived at Julianne's office and she showed him into his father's office. The young man immediately introduced himself as Anthony and said he was his daughter's fiancé. As soon as the owner of the office found out who had come to him, he immediately pointed Jacob to the door and forbade him to come near his family. The guy tried to tell Anthony that he loved his daughter, but Juliana's father called a security guard who drove Jacob out of the office. Jacob realized that he would not have to be friends with his daughter's father. The guy immediately realized that now it was necessary to know the opinion of his beloved, namely whether she would agree to go against her father. Jacob did not put off this conversation and called Juliana, saying that he was standing near the office where she works. The girl soon came out and approached the young man, who told her about his visit to Anthony. The interlocutor listened in silence and then spoke. "I told you that you could not have a conversation with my father. I made an attempt. But it's not about that now. Tell me, please, what are you going to do in this situation? You're not a stupid girl, and you realize that it's up to you whether we're together or not. It's important for me to know that right now," Jacob said excitedly. "I've already told you once that I want to be your spouse, so I'm going to pack my things and move in with you." "I don't see any other way out," she said quietly. As soon as the boy heard this, he hugged her and said that he loved her very much. Jacob offered to move in with him on the same day, but Julianne asked him to wait a few days. The man did not insist on his own, as he now knew the decision of the chosen one. 3 days later, Julianne moved in with Jacob and the couple applied to the registry office. The girl's mother, Sabrina, secretly from her spouse, came to visit the young. The woman met with the future son-in-law and asked him not to hold a grudge against Julianne's father. Jacob, in response, only shrugged his shoulders. Sabrina promised her daughter and her chosen one that she would try to change her husband's decision and ask him to give his blessing to the young people. The woman on the same day turned to her spouse with a conversation. She informed him that she was at her daughter's house today and met Juliana's boyfriend. And then Sabrina started to talk about Jacob's virtues, but she was abruptly interrupted by her husband with the words, "You've made a grave mistake. I ask you not to visit your eldest daughter. She chose to live on her own. Let her live her own life. Yes, I did sneak out to see the kids, but I was honest with you about it. It was important to me to know who our daughter was going to live with. And now I can safely say that I approve of Julianne's choice. I don't understand why you're so hostile to this guy since you don't even know him," Sabrina said. "Honey, I don't mind this young man. I don't care about him at this point. It's not about him. I'll explain my point of view to you. You know very well that you and I have spoiled our daughters, and don't say otherwise. You stay at home and I work with Julianne, so I can tell you that she only goes to the office for the sake of going to the office. Our daughter doesn't do her work. Another employee does it for her," the man said, and he wanted to continue, but his wife interrupted him. "First of all, I stay at home at your whim, and don't reproach me with that. And further, if Julianne doesn't fulfill her work duties, why don't you tell her work duties? Why don't you tell her you're indulging her in it? Honey, I don't blame you for staying home, and I never will. About Julianne, I'm tired of telling her that. All I can say is that both of our daughters are used to living on their own. And since Julianne has complete confidence in her fiancé, let them try to live on their own, without any outside help. And when they live together for 3 years, then I will believe in both the daughter and her boyfriend. And at the moment, for me, what's his name, Jacob, is still a suitor for a bride with a big dowry. That may sound harsh, but it's just my personal opinion, and you can't change it, Anthony said in a calm voice. And yet you're too hard on the girls. And I have a couple questions. Are you seriously not going to your eldest daughter's wedding? And you're gonna give Julianne her car, Sabrina said. What wedding? How much money are they gonna play with? Don't be crazy, darling. I'll give her the car, it's hers. We gave it to her for her 20th birthday. And I have a favor to ask you. Let's not bring this up again, so you don't get nervous. You know you shouldn't worry, because your heart is not all right. You and I have another topic to talk about, as we're about to leave for Belgium, my husband replied. Time slowly moved on, and the wedding day was approaching. Julianne hoped in her heart that her father would change his mind about her relationship with Jacob. The girl approached her father at work a few days before she was to be married and asked her dad directly, "Aren't you even going to come to the registry office when your daughter gets married for the first time? I'll congratulate you anyway, along with your mother. But I won't change my mind. You'll live on your honestly earned money, but that doesn't apply to you. You're used to having everything done for you," said Anthony. "Oh, you are? Well, then I will resign, and my foot in your house will not be angry," shouted the girl, and jumped out of the office of his father. The man after her only managed to say, "You're right." Soon the wedding day came and the young people signed. After the registry office, the newlyweds went to a cafe, along with Julianne's friend Sabrina and 2 of Jacob's buddies. After the celebration, the girl's mother turned to her daughter. "Your father told me to congratulate you, and here is some money for you as a gift." When he heard this, immediately said, "We will take only half of the envelope and that part will be from you, and we don't want anything from Anthony. I don't want him saying he sponsored us in life." "Don't say that, son, because you don't know Julianne's father. He's a good man, but he can be harsh," Sabrina said softly. "Yes, I probably don't even want to know him anymore. To be honest, because I don't understand how you cannot come to your own daughter's wedding. I just can't get it into my head," said the guy. And with these words, he counted out half of the money from the envelope and returned the rest to his mother-in-law. Time flew by, and it had been a month since the young people had married. Jacob was the only one working in the family, and Julianne was at home. She'd quit her father's job the day she'd last talked to him in his office. She realized that her husband's salary was only enough to pay the utilities and eat a poor diet. This fact irritated Juliana, but she tried her best not to show her dissatisfaction to her husband. And one day the girl could not stand it, called her mother, and complained about the lack of money. Sabrina sympathized with her daughter and said that she would try to help the young family. The woman realized that to appeal to her husband for money for Juliana is a waste of time, as the spouse will refuse this request. And then Sabrina went on the sly. She asked her husband for finances to visit the spa salon. Anthony did not refuse his favorite wife in this and immediately allocated the money. Since then, and so it happened that Sabrina, under a plausible pretext, asked her spouse for cash, which was transferred to the eldest daughter. And Julianne at one time on the questions of her husband, where the finances answered, "Although I sit at home, but still learn on the internet, so I get small fees." Julianne also knew that Jacob could not tell her where the money came from, because her husband would make her give it to him. She didn't want to deny herself anything, but she had to moderate her demands because her mother gave her money, but it wasn't very much. 6 months later, Julianne was married to Jacob, and then her mother called her and told her that she and her father and youngest daughter were going to live in Belgium. The girl knew that the parents were planning to move there, but at this point, this news was a shock to Julianne. The young woman thought about it She and her father had a long conversation that as soon as the parents move abroad, then the father will sell his business and the money will give it to her so that she can open her own restaurant. And now, Juliana didn't know what her father would do, since she still hadn't communicated with him. The girl immediately asked her mother this question, and the latter in response said that she and her husband had not had a conversation about it. A few days later, Sabrina informed her daughter that her father would sell his business, and the finances would be used to open a business in Belgium. For Juliana, it became the most real shocking news, because she was hoping for this money. Not thinking long, the girl went to her father at work. She walked into Anthony's office and angrily asked, "What do you mean by that? After all, you promised me that the money that you get for this company will give me. And now my mother says to me quite the opposite. Do you have a conscience? You should greet your dad first, and then start this conversation. But if you have no manners, we'll talk in your language. I thought I told you I wasn't going to help you. So what makes you think I should give the proceeds to you? You have a husband, so let him provide for you," said the man, minting every word. "But for decency, you could at least give us a start-up capital, as other parents do. I realize you're angry with me, but you can't do that to children. After all, I am your daughter, and I have the right to at least some help from your side," almost crying, said Julianne. "Don't push pity on me. You know I am deaf and dumb to tears. Once again, I repeat to you that if your spouse is a real man, he just has to be a provider and bring home a proper salary. By the way, I forgot to ask if your hubby sent you here," Anthony said in a steady voice. "Jacob doesn't know anything." "Thank you, Father, for your help, and I'll live without you," she said angrily, and left the office. A little more than 2 months passed, and Juliana's parents went abroad. Her mother told her eldest daughter that she would help her with money if possible. Juliana tearfully thanked her mother. A couple weeks after the departure of her parents, the girl suddenly felt ill. She felt constant gag reflexes. Julianne was annoyed with herself for feeling bad. The spouse who came from work noticed that the wife was in a gloomy mood, and he asked her what was wrong. The young woman said, "I just feel disgusting. Shall we call an ambulance?" The husband asked thoughtfully. "No need. Tomorrow everything will pass," irritably replied the young woman. However, even the next day the girl did not feel better. When several days passed and the nausea did not go away, Julianne suspected that she was probably pregnant. This thought led the young woman in confusion, as at this stage of life she did not want to become a mother. The girl, to make sure, quickly dressed and ran to the pharmacy for a test. And after a while her fears were confirmed, as the test showed a positive result. Julianne sat down on the chair. At this moment she wanted to weep. She did not need this pregnancy. In the evening her husband came from work and again found her in a bad mood. The man anxiously looked at the chosen one and already demanding tone asked her to go to the clinic tomorrow. In response, the girl, almost crying, moaned, "I can tell you my own diagnosis, and without doctors. I'm pregnant." Jacob looked at her in amazement, then ran up to her and kissed her face tenderly. Later he took her in his arms and spun her around. The girl asked to put her on the floor. Her husband obeyed unconditionally. Only then did Jacob say, "You silly girl, why are you so unhappy with me? You should be happy that we're going to be parents soon. Thank you for the great news. You've made me happy because I'm going to be a daddy soon. And you're going to be a daddy soon. And you're going to be a mommy. Too bad you can't tell the sex of the baby at this age. You're not smart, are you? Why should we be happy? We're living like bums and now this baby. I don't want to have children at this time. We'll have to get rid of the baby," Julianne said gloomily. "What the hell are you talking about? What do you mean, get rid of it? Stop, this baby was conceived in love, and it has to come into the world. Don't you realize that this is our baby with you? We'll be the head of the family." "But I don't want children," exclaimed the young woman with tears in her eyes. "You just have a shock from this news, so you say so perplexed," said the man, and added, "You'd better lie down and calm down. In any case, this baby will be born, and you don't have to contradict me. I'll take the day after tomorrow off and will go with you to the women's clinic, where you are with me to the women's clinic, where you are with me to register for pregnancy and childbirth. And put the stupid thoughts about getting rid of me out of your head. And about the fact that we live poorly, then I will work harder to provide for the family. Don't worry, my dear, you and I will survive. The main thing is that we are together, and the rest we are not afraid. Soon Juliana, accompanied by her husband, to register at the gynecologist. The young woman saw how her husband is happy about her pregnancy, but she herself was not as excited as her husband. Julianne, after visiting the doctor, called her mother and told the news. Sabrina took the message with delight and began to congratulate her daughter. At the end of the conversation, Juliana's mother told her that she would transfer a significant amount of money the other day. The girl thanked her mother languidly in response. Time moved forward imperceptibly, and soon Juliana gave birth to a baby girl who was immediately found to have an anomaly with the right kidney. Doctors advised the woman in labor to give up the sick child, and she was ready for this step. However, her spouse forbade her to do so, saying, "We will cure our Juliet. You've already named your daughter." "You're quick," Julianne said. "Don't you like the name?" "I think it suits her," Jacob said affectionately, and added, "She'll be as beautiful as you are." "Red-haired beauty," the man said. Soon Julianne was discharged home with the baby. She was greeted from the maternity hospital by her husband with a large bouquet of scarlet roses. The man gently accepted the package with the baby from the hands of the nurse and looked at the girl's face and quietly said, "She looks just like her mother, just as beautiful." "She looks just like you too," the woman in the white coat said with a smile. Jacob and his wife began a new phase in their lives where they became parents of an adorable baby girl. Julianne gladly stepped into the duties of a mom, which pleased her husband very much, since during pregnancy he often heard from his beloved that she did not want this child. At those moments, Jacob was angry at his wife, as he believed that all the emotions of his wife negatively affect the fetus in her womb. The first year flew by as Juliet was born. During this period, the young parents experienced many difficulties as the disease of the daughter made itself known. Juliana, during this time, twice lay with the girl in the hospital. The woman was worried because her daughter was so often ill, but still tried not to lose heart. Jacob tried to do well in his work to earn more money. He even asked his boss to give him an extra load. The owner of the service station respected Jacob and understood that the young man at the moment has a hard time. So he went along with it. 2 more years passed and Juliet turned 3 years old. During this time, Juliana had changed a great deal, becoming irritable and furious about everything. Jacob sincerely sympathized with his wife, as all the main care for his sick daughter fell on his wife's shoulders. The man tried to help his wife as much as he could. And in the life of the young couple was, and another problem is a lack of money in the family budget. Although Julianne's mother sent monthly sums, but these finances covered only the medicine for the treatment of her daughter. And once, when Jacob came from work, he saw that his wife is in an elevated mood. He was surprised, as it did not happen often lately. The man turned to his beloved. "I am pleased to see you in high spirits. Can you please me with good news? Of course, I want to inform you that my father called me to visit. Can you believe it? After all these years, he himself called and invited me to come for a vacation," said the woman. "That's great news. Together with Juliet, we'll divorce there. Just show the local doctors our daughter. We can't take her to the capital because we don't have enough money," Jacob said. "You misunderstand me. I'm going alone because it wouldn't be a vacation with my daughter. You have to realize, honey, that in the 3 years since Juliet was born, I'm exhausted and I need a break. Don't worry, I've got it all figured out how you're going to get along without me. My father sent me some money and I'll leave half of it for you to hire a nurse while I'm away. Don't worry, I'll be gone for 3 weeks, Julianne said affectionately. The man looked at his beloved in confusion. For the first few minutes, he couldn't find anything to say to his wife. But as soon as the first shock of what he had heard had passed, Jacob said, "Didn't you consult me before making such decisions? I'm not a closet in our interior, and I have the right to participate in the life of our family. I'm against it. How do you imagine that with our daughter we'll sit with an outsider woman who knows nothing about our daughter, and even more so has no idea how to take care of Juliet? Now, let's not have any of this theatrics. You don't know what it's like to be cooped up for 24 hours with a sick child. I told you I'm only going away for 3 weeks. And now let's not let you stop me," replied the wife irritably. "Suppose you are tired, and I do not deny it. But when Juliet is cranky at night, you are not with her. I am. And that's why I don't even blame you for the fact that I have to go to work in the morning," the man said sullenly. "What do you want from me?" "I'm tired. You know, tired. You're the one who insisted that Juliet be taken from the maternity hospital, not me. And I'm tired of being broke all the time. Do you really think I make money on the internet? So I can tell you that it is my mother monthly transfers money to my account, and you only feed me breakfast that in the very near future will begin to earn much more. Let's leave this topic, because whether you want it or not, I will go to my parents with a challenge," said the wife. "So for so many years you just lied to me about working on the internet. I didn't expect that from you. Well, if you want to rest, then go. Perhaps you really need to rest with bitterness," said the head of the family, and went to his daughter, who was sitting in a high chair and looking at a book, and only the owner of the apartment wanted to bend down to Juliet, as he felt that he was embraced from behind by his wife, who at the same moment said, "Thank you, honey. I knew you would understand me. I love you. You'll do fine without me, and I'm leaving you alone for a while." A couple of weeks later, Julianne left to visit her parents abroad. Jacob hired an older woman to take care of his daughter while he was at work. The man was worried about how the nanny would cope with her duties. However, his worries were in vain, because the old woman found an approach to the girl. 3 weeks flew by, during which time Julianne called only 6 times to inquire about the everyday life of her husband and daughter. Jacob was hurt by this, but he consoled himself with the thought that long-distance calls were very expensive, which was why his wife called so seldom. The man called his wife and asked, "I missed you madly, and Juliet also asks for Mom. I hope you are rested. When can we expect you back? Honey, I miss you too, but my dad's in trouble. He asked me to stay late. I can't refuse him. You know that we haven't been in contact for so long. I can't let him down at such a difficult moment," the woman said in a pitiful tone. "I understand you, but tell me at least approximately when to wait for you." "Probably a couple more weeks, maybe a little more. I'll let you know as soon as everything is safely resolved," the wife said, and disconnected the connection. After that conversation, a month passed and Julianne returned home. Jacob was overjoyed to have her back. The head of the family noted that the trip for his wife benefited the chosen one as if rejuvenated. If Jacob was pleased with the arrival of his wife, Julianne was not thrilled with her return. The woman didn't say so directly, but her constant dissatisfaction made it obvious. And the man, a couple weeks after his wife's arrival, asked her, "You seem to have dispersed, went on vacation, but I have the feeling that you are always dissatisfied with something. What's going on with you?" "Do you really want to know?" asked the wife. "Yes," replied the head of the household. "Well, I'll tell you straight. You come home from work, and you always stink of diesel like a real man. I don't even want to go to bed with you, let alone more. I'm sick of scraping by on a dime, and if the truth be told, I have a man waiting for me in Belgium. I thought things would work out when we got there, but I'm annoyed with all this living. In general, if you come to the denominator, I'm going to another," said the young woman, and looked carefully at her husband. The head of the family listened to his wife. He did not interrupt her once while she was talking. As soon as Julianne was silent, Jacob stood up and walked to the kitchen, where he poured himself a glass of water from the tap. The man stood thoughtfully for a moment, then set the glass on the table and turned back to his wife, who was waiting for his reaction. Jacob looked at Julianne and said, "You're free to do what you want. It happens in life, but I don't understand why you kept silent for so long. You should have told me right away. I don't think I've ever offended you, especially never raised a hand against you. What were you waiting for?" "You don't have to answer. It doesn't matter now because you've made your choice. But I want to warn you at once that I won't let Juliet go abroad. You can do whatever you want, but I won't allow it. I wasn't going to take my daughter with me." "I also wanted to talk about this." Young woman began to speak, but she was interrupted by her husband's words. "So you had already planned everything in advance, if you were going to talk about it. You amazed me. I thought I knew you, but it turned out I didn't. Well, in the divorce you will specify that the daughter will stay with me. We do not need your alimony. And one more request. While you settle all things with the discharge, with the divorce and so on, I'll ask you to rent an apartment for this time and not live with us. Would you do that?" Jacob said in a muffled voice. "Yes, of course, as you say," Julianne replied in astonishment, expecting a very different reaction from her husband. She had expected her husband to scandalize her or say mean things to her, but nothing happened. Just a few days later, Julianne moved out of her husband and then filed for divorce. Jacob was in a spacey state after the last conversation with his spouse. He could not understand how his favorite woman could do such a thing to him. Jacob also wondered how Julianne could so easily give up her own daughter. Jacob began a new stage in his life, where he became a divorced man who was raising a child alone. Jacob realized that he now had to be both mom and dad to his daughter in one person. And he also realized that he would not let any more women into his life, as he had been betrayed by girls more than once. After Julianne left, Jacob turned to the former nanny and asked her to take Juliet again for a moderate fee. However, the woman refused the offer, which the man did not expect at all. Jacob was looking for a way out of the situation, because the daughter is still small and she cannot be left at home alone, and the daycare center was not possible because of Jacob's working day. And then the guy remembered about the teacher of the orphanage, Leslie. Jacob very much hoped that the woman has already retired and sits at home. And soon the young man with his daughter was already sitting in Leslie's guest and told about his problem. The teacher of the orphanage listened to the ward and said, "Good for you for remembering me. You're lucky I've been out for a month on a well-deserved vacation and I have a carload of free time. I think that your Princess Juliet and I will get along very well. I'll be sure to tell your daughter about your shenanigans as a child. Thank you very much. Just tell me, how much will you charge me per month? I need to know that to plan my budget," the man said. "Shame on you, Jacob," Leslie said sternly, and then continued, "I'm not going to take any money. It will be my pleasure to babysit, and Juliet will be like my own granddaughter, for my own grandchildren are far away and rarely visit. I don't feel comfortable with you refusing the money. I'll feel obligated, and I don't welcome that," Jacob said quietly. "Enough of this. You'd better use the money you saved to buy your daughter fruit and toys," Leslie said. In the meantime, Julianne had moved to Belgium, where she was waiting for her lover, whom she had met when she had visited the country earlier. The man's name was Martin, and he was 10 years older than the woman. Julianne implied that her parents would ask her about her daughter, so she decided that her father and mother didn't need to know the whole truth. She told them that Jacob had gone on a seaside vacation with Juliet, and she had chosen to come here. The girl realized that this lie would help for a while, and then it would be necessary to compose something else. Juliana's father believed in this tale, but his wife did not, and so she decided to talk seriously with her daughter. The woman pronounced, "I have a feeling you're being wise about the sea. Tell me honestly, what's going on with you and Jacob?" "Mom." "Why would I lie to you?" the girl said unhappily. "Don't be sarcastic, but tell me honestly," the mother said. "Okay, I'll explain everything to you now. Jacob and I have a complicated relationship now, and we decided to live apart to sort out our feelings. I came here and he went to the sea, Julianne said. That's not why you came here. You came to see Martin. I know about him. I don't understand you, daughter. I don't understand how you can cheat in marriage and leave your little daughter in your father's care. Juliet needs her mother now. That is you, Sabrina said condemningly. No more lectures, Mom. Yes, I came to see Martin and also to sort out my feelings. Let's not talk about it anymore, she said nervously. It had been a month since Julianne had talked to her mother. All this time, the young woman lived with her lover. Sabrina came to visit the couple and asked her daughter when she was going to go back to the United States. Juliana began to evade the conversation, but her mother strictly said, "Stop playing a silly girl in front of me and tell me, when are you going to go back?" "Never," Julianne said sharply and then quickly blurted out, "I divorced Jacob a long time ago, and he and I agreed that Juliet would stay with him." "Mom, you have to understand that my feelings for Jacob have cooled and I've fallen in love with another man. I didn't expect this from you. I can understand that love has passed and you've fallen in love with another man, but how could you forget about your daughter? Doesn't your motherly heart ache for your own child?" Sabrina said, "Don't give me those platitudes. I haven't forgotten anyone. I called Jacob and find out about my daughter." Julianne lied to her mom. "Look, life is complicated, and it often boomerangs," Julianne said sadly to her mother, who intuitively sensed that Julianne was lying about calling her ex-husband. Sabrina, after this conversation, went home depressed. It was hard on her soul after the conversation with her daughter. And the woman was also worried about her granddaughter and former son-in-law. It dawned on her, why be in the dark when she could call Jacob and talk to him? When she got home, Sabrina dialed her son-in-law's number, and when she heard his voice, she said, "Hello, Jacob, sorry to bother you, but I was wondering how you were doing." "It's strange that you called after such a long time," the man said, and added, "We're fine, don't worry. I hope you don't have any more questions for me. Jacob, son, I understand your resentment, but don't get me wrong. I'm not responsible for my daughter's actions. I only called you now because I just found out about your divorce a couple hours ago. Julianne deceived her father and me when she came to Belgium. Jacob, let me call you once in a while to check up on you. We are not strangers. You're raising my only granddaughter, and I will also help you financially, at least in small amounts. Don't deny me that," the woman said brokenly. Jacob remained silent for a while, knowing that Sabrina had always been good to him. Suddenly, the man could feel his mother-in-law's distress. Jacob said peacefully afterward, "Of course you can call, but not until after 7 o'clock at night, so I'll be home. But I don't want money. I don't want you to beg from your spouse. It won't be my husband's money. It'll be mine. I've been crocheting fishnets since I was a kid, and these items sell well," Sabrina said. The years flew by. Jacob was still devoting his free time to his daughter without thinking about his personal life. The visiting teacher saw that Jacob was living only for his daughter and repeatedly scolded him that he had given up on himself. Jacob reduced all these conversations to one thing, that he was not going to marry again, as one marriage was enough for him. She felt sorry for the man who had once loved Juliana so much, and she had betrayed him. The day before Juliana was to go to first grade, Jacob received a call from Leslie, who spoke excitedly into the receiver. "Jacob, hurry, come over here. Our girl is sick. I've called an ambulance and they've taken her to the hospital." "Which hospital?" the man said nervously. Leslie gave the number of the hospital. Jacob warned the service station boss about his absence and called a cab. The man arrived at the hospital and saw his daughter's teacher sobbing. He hugged the woman and then made his way to the post where a nurse was sitting. Jacob asked her about Juliet's condition. The girl in the white coat said that the girl was in intensive care and that only the doctor could give all the information. The man paced the hospital corridor nervously. He realized that his daughter's illness had worsened. For Jacob, every minute waiting for the doctor felt like an hour. As soon as he saw the nurse's gesture pointing to the man in the white coat, he knew that he would get all the answers to his questions from this man. Jacob hurried to the doctor's office and gave him his daughter's name. The doctor looked at the visitor and then invited him into his office to talk to him. As soon as the men entered the office, the doctor said, "Your girl's condition will come back to normal in a couple hours. She's on a drip right now. A little later you will be able to see her. And now I will not load you with medical terms, but you need to take your child to a Moscow clinic. The address I will give you later. There is a skillful doctor working in that institution. He works, we can say, miracles in the field of medicine. However, treatment with this doctor costs a lot of money, as well as the medicines that Juliet will need. I understand that you will want to ask me why this hospital cannot help your child. I'll give you the answer right away. There is no good equipment here. We can only keep the disease from progressing, but we can't cure it," he said. Jacob left the doctor's office in a depressed mood as he learned the approximate amount of money it would take to treat his baby. Leslie came up to him and told him everything. The woman splashed her hands when she heard the cost of treatment. She realized that it would be difficult to get such a sum. In the evening of that day, Jacob was already sitting near his daughter, who was already lying in the ward. She looked at her father with a frightened look. Father stroked the child gently on the head and said affectionately, "My redhead, what are you afraid of? Everything is fine. You just got a little bad, so you went to the hospital. Now the doctors will work their magic on you, and you will recover in no time," said the man. "You're not lying to me," the girl said. "Have I ever lied to you?" Jacob said. "I don't think so," Juliet answered. "You've answered your own question. You're going to have to stay in the hospital for a while. I know you can handle it, and I promise to visit you every day." "Okay," the father said, and when Juliet nodded affirmatively, he said good night and left the room. When Jacob got home, he sat down in the kitchen and put both hands on his head. He did not know what to do in this situation. After all, a lot of money was needed. The man realized that he could borrow from acquaintances, as well as from his boss at work, but Jacob realized that even this amount would not be enough. He was looking for a way to get more money, and then it hit him. He could call his ex-mother-in-law, who had been sending money to him and Juliet every 2 to 3 months for all these years. He took out his cell phone and dialed Julian's mother's number. The woman answered immediately. "Jacob, it's good to hear from you. You won't believe this, but I just wanted to call today to see if you were ready for the first bell at school. We're all set. Now, I'm calling on a delicate matter. Don't worry, because you have a heart condition," the man said quietly. "Is Juliet sick?" I felt it. It was as if the cats were scratching at my heart. "Tell me the truth, son, and only the truth, son. And only the truth." "Don't worry about me," the woman said. "Yes, Juliet is in the hospital, and we need a very large sum for treatment in a Moscow clinic. I realize that calling Julianne for money is silly, because she's only called us a couple of times over the years, so I'm appealing to you with excitement," Jacob said, and named the amount we needed, adding that he could raise half of it, but where else to get the money he couldn't think of. There was silence on the other end of the phone for a while, and then Sabrina said through her sobs, "I'll try to help you, but my husband and I don't have that kind of money. Give me a few days, son." The next day, Jacob started calling all his friends and acquaintances, asking for money. Some sympathized with him but refused to help him because of their personal problems. Some friends gave money, but the amounts were small. The man also took a loan from a bank. Asked for help, Jacob, and it worked from the boss and his colleagues. After a few days, Sabrina also transferred money to him, and Leslie, who was with Juliet, also lent him money. Jacob evaluated the collected capital and sighed sorrowfully because the collected finances were not enough. The man didn't know what else to do about his situation. In despair, the man mentally turned to the Lord God. "Almighty Creator of all living things, I beg you, make it so that the disease of my little angel will pass to me and Juliet will recover. I am ready to give my life to you, so that my daughter does not get sick. I do not know what words to use to address you, and in general how to talk to you. Just understand that now I am in a catastrophically difficult situation, and I need help more than ever." The man sat for some time after addressing the Lord God, as if waiting for a miracle, but it did not happen. Then Jacob got ready and went to the hospital to visit his daughter. When he arrived at the hospital, he involuntarily thought of the miracle again. Jacob was about to enter the hospital when he felt a pressing pain in his heart. He clutched his chest with his hand and sat down quietly on the step. Jacob sat there afraid to move as he felt the pain in his heart. The thought flashed through his mind that he should not die at this moment, for he had not yet helped his daughter. At the same moment, Jacob heard himself being addressed. He looked up and saw a pretty girl who said, "This is the second time I've come to you. This is the second time I've spoken to you, and you're as silent as a statue. Why are you sitting on a reinforced concrete step? Because so you can get cold in your household." "It's all right," Jacob said, barely audibly. "Are you all right?" The stranger persisted. "I have a heart attack," the man said. At the same moment, the girl opened her purse, and after a moment she took out a pill, which she handed to Jacob with the words, "Chew it thoroughly, and you'll feel better. And for God's sake, get up off this stair, or I'm going to have a heart attack. Then you'll have to save me." Jacob smiled and then ate the pill before he got up. He thanked the girl and was about to leave when the stranger stopped him with a question. "Say, is something wrong with you?" "There is such a thing," reluctantly said the man. "Can you share it?" "Sometimes it helps in stressful situations," said the girl. "You say that as if you work as a psychologist," said the man. "You are partly right. I'm in my last year of medical school, and in the future I will work as a psychologist. And meanwhile, I work part-time in this hospital as a nurse," with a smile, said the stranger, and added, "So your chest pain is gone?" "Yes, thank you again. By the way, what kind of pill did you give me to know for the future?" asked the man. The young woman laughed in response, and then pulled out a pack of pills from her purse, which she handed to Jacob. He took them and looked at her in surprise. The girl, seeing the man's bewilderment, cheered up even more, and then told him that she had cured him of his chest pain with an ordinary vitamin that was prescribed mostly for children. Jacob smiled and said, "You're a born psychologist. To take away pain with a pill that wasn't meant for that. You know, I think I'll take your advice and tell you what's bothering me right now." As they walked away from the hospital, the man realized that he really wanted to tell this stranger, who hadn't passed by when she saw that a man on the street was sick. Jacob told about his daughter's illness and the fact that he could not raise the necessary amount of money. He said that Juliet was being discharged and that he would have to take the girl to Washington in the near future. Jacob was suddenly relieved when he finished speaking. He looked at the girl, who was sitting pensively, watching the pigeons pecking at pieces of white bread on the pavement. The couple sat in silence for a while, and then the stranger perked up and held out her hand to introduce herself. "My name is Martha. And you?" Jacob shook the girl's hand and said to the man, "Well, we've met. Now let's do this. We'll visit your daughter first, because she's waiting for her daddy. And then I have a little idea. But I'll tell you about it later. You want to go with me to Juliet's?" "But why would you do that?" "I don't understand," Jacob said, puzzled. "Let's not waste any time. Let's go to baby. We'll leave all questions for later," the girl said. Soon they were sitting in Susanna's room. The girl looked at her father's new acquaintance with a surprised look and did not understand what this young woman was doing here. Martha immediately noticed the child's perplexed look, so she explained to Susanna that she was a future psychologist and wanted to just talk to the children in the hospital. The girl nodded in response, expressing her agreement. After a while, the adults were about to leave the room when Jacob's daughter turned to the girl. "Can I ask you to come and see me again? You ask questions so interestingly, it was like a game." "I will visit you, if your father doesn't mind," Martha said. Martha looked questioningly at her father, who was pleasantly surprised that the new acquaintance had found her way to his daughter so easily. The man saw that Juliet was waiting for an answer and he smiled and said that he didn't mind the young woman's presence. The couple left the hospital shortly afterward, and Jacob thanked the girl again, but only because she had been able to make Juliet feel at ease. Martha smiled and reminded him that her future profession was psychologist. And then the new acquaintance spoke up, "And now I have a proposal to you, but only you. Do not refuse at once, and do not think I am crazy. First listen to me, and if possible, do not interrupt me." "Okay, but let's do it somewhere in a cafe, because here to stand and talk uncomfortable," said the man. The young people hurried to the nearest cafe, where they ordered coffee and croissants. And the girl, taking her time, began to say that she herself was from the village and was brought up by her grandmother Sharon. The new acquaintance does not remember her mother, as she left her when she was 2 years old. Here the young woman was interrupted by Jacob with a question. "What do you mean? Abandon? You are strange." "She fell in love with a man, and I became a hindrance to their relationship, so she left me, and my grandmother took custody of me. Now this is my grandmother we're talking about. The thing is that I suggest you, as soon as my daughter is discharged from the hospital, not immediately leave to Washington and take her to my grandmother. She is my witch doctor, treats people with herbs, but my old lady does not accept anyone, as she has more burrows than a thoroughbred horse. But she'll take you and your daughter. I do not promise that grandmother can help. After all, she is not a fairy tale sorceress, but you should try." "What if a miracle happens?" the young woman said. "You amaze me more and more today," Jacob said thoughtfully. "What do you mean? Why don't you tell me what I've done to impress you?" "I'm interested," Martha said. "Well, you've been frank, and I'll be frank with you too. In the first place, you surprised me when you didn't hesitate to help a stranger in the street, and in a very peculiar way, by giving a common pill. Secondly, surprised when so quickly and uncomplicatedly made friends with Juliet, and she is not a particularly sociable girl. Third, you were abandoned by your mother when you were a small child, and so did Juliet's mother. She left her daughter at a young age to arrange her personal life with another man. Fourth, I was asking the Lord God to perform a miracle. And you were just talking about a miracle," Jacob said, looking at her seriously. "You are a very observant man, but don't give me too much credit, for there may be many simple coincidences. I'm talking about a miracle, and now I have to go home. And you, as I understand, to work tomorrow. I suggest you take my phone number and call me when you are ready to go to my grandmother to show your daughter." "If you say so, but I have a question for you. I would like to know, if it is not a secret, why did you choose the profession of a psychologist?" "Today, I understand, the day of sincerity," with a smile, said the girl, and then continued to answer. "It's all because of my mom who left me. I didn't try to find her. She sent me letters for the first 2 years after she left, and then she was lost. And when I began to grow up, I was very much occupied with the thought of what made a woman to abandon the child she carried under her heart for 9 months, to take and abandon it overnight, and then to cut it out of her life altogether. And being already in the 8th grade, I realized that I can only find out the answers to my questions if I become a psychologist. I hope I have satisfied your curiosity," said the young woman. "Thank you for your sincerity. You have clearly answered the question," said the man. The two men parted. Jacob went home and thought about his new acquaintance for a while. After a while, he thought about Martha's grandmother and wondered if she really had a gift for curing people. 3 days later, the doctor at the hospital said that Juliet would be discharged tomorrow. The man thanked the doctor for his attentive attitude to patients and then followed to his daughter's room. As soon as the girl saw her father, she informed him that Martha had come to see her in the morning and brought her a Barbie doll and fruit. The man was pleasantly surprised. He had not expected that a new acquaintance would visit his daughter. In the evening of the same day, Jacob called Martha and said, "You know, you make it a habit to make me thank your person. You made my daughter feel better today with your visit, and that means you made me feel better too. I already owe you a debt of gratitude. Don't exaggerate. By the way, Juliet said she's being discharged tomorrow. Do you want to go to my grandmother, or do you pass? The girl said with a smile. For the sake of my daughter, I am ready for anything. So if it will be convenient for you, we can go to your relative tomorrow evening. The interlocutor said. Then it is agreed. The young woman said goodbye and disconnected the connection. The next day, Jacob, his daughter, and Martha were already at the witch doctor's house. The old woman listened attentively to her granddaughter and then asked the man to show her his palm. Jacob was surprised at the request and wanted to say that it was his daughter, not he who was sick, but he saw Martha warning him not to ask. The man gave his grandmother his hand, and she scrutinized it and spoke in a whisper. I didn't expect it to be you. But all right, now leave us alone with the child. Martha gestured for the man to follow her. Jacob asked her about the witch's words, but she said that her grandmother's words were a mystery to her. The man was perplexed. But you are Sharon's granddaughter, so her gift should have passed to you. If you believe the beliefs, then this gift passes through a generation. That is, these abilities will appear in my child in the future quietly, said the girl. Half an hour later, the witch doctor called the couple into the room and said that the girl should stay with her for a while. Jacob refused the offer, but the old woman spoke sternly. Why the hell did you come here? I thought you wanted to cure your daughter, but you're turning your nose up at me. You want to say that you can cure my Juliet when our doctors cannot do it? Stunned man said. Listen, you oaf of the King of Heaven, I wouldn't suggest you keep the baby if I didn't feel confident that I could help her. Yes, I do not give 100% guarantee that I can do it, but you have to try, and your Washington with Peetsies will not run away. There's still time for that. Juliet has to live here for at least 3 months, so it's up to you to figure it out, Sharon said. Jacob looked puzzled, first at his daughter and then at Martha. Juliet exclaimed, Daddy, you don't have to be afraid for me, because if Grandma says so, you should listen to her. I know that I'm sick, but I didn't want to upset you because I saw that you are very worried. Leave me here, you and I will call every day, and on weekends you and I will call every day. And on weekends, you and Aunt Martha will visit me. What about school? You'll have to go to school here, said the man, who couldn't get over the witch's suggestion. Jacob had never been away from his daughter, and here the child would have to live for 3 months without him. I'll go to school here, the girl said. Jacob made his decision, for he had come to this village only to try to cure his child, and the witch doctor had given him hope that Juliet would be cured. It was decided that Martha would bring the girl's things in a couple days. Soon Jacob said goodbye to his daughter and left Sharon with the girl. On the way home, the man turned to Martha. I don't know what to do now, as I have borrowed a lot of money from people, taken out a loan. I don't know what to do with my finances if your grandmother manages to perform a miracle. Now I think it's not such a major issue. The main thing is that you have to believe that your grandmother will succeed, and she will, take my word for it. And the money you can give away from whom you took it, calmly replied the girl. A month passed as Juliet lived at the witch doctor's house. She called her father every day to tell him about her daily routine and asked about Martha. Jacob, in turn, told his daughter that he missed her very much, and also told her news about himself and his new acquaintance. And so 3 months passed, and the man drove excitedly to pick up his girl, accompanied by Martha, who saw how worried Jacob was. Soon the couple entered Sharon's house, and Juliet squealed with joy as she hugged her father and then Martha. The healer looked at her granddaughter carefully, then took her aside and quietly asked, Are you sure that this man is your destiny? You see and know everything. How did you guess about our relationship? The girl said, embarrassed. I knew about it a long time ago, when I first saw this man in our house. Remember, I asked him to show me his hand then, said the old woman. That's right. You said, Is it really you? I knew what those words meant. You had read on his hand that he would be my favorite person, Martha said, stunned. You see, granddaughter, the old woman said with a smile, Grandma, I love you. I love this man too, just like I love his daughter, she said with tears in her eyes. Jacob left the village with his daughter and Martha. On the way, he thought that in the next few days his daughter would be examined, and only then it would be known whether Sharon had helped him or not to get rid of the girl's illness. Jacob was also worried about how to inform his daughter that he had proposed to Martha. He was worried that the girl would take this news negatively because all these years he had spent his time only with Juliet, and his fears were connected with the fact that his daughter would be jealous of the chosen one. That same day in the evening, Jacob was sitting at home with Juliet in the kitchen and having tea as the girl asked an unexpected question. "Daddy, do you love Martha?" "Why did you ask that question, Carrot?" The father asked his daughter in a daze. "It's just that I like Martha very much. You never told me about my mom saying only that she went to heaven, but it seems to me that Martha is like my mom. Only mothers can be so caring to their children," she said thoughtfully. "It's good that you started this conversation. Let's do it this way. I tell you everything honestly, and you give me a verdict. Daughter, I love Martha, and I asked her to marry me. She said yes. Now it's up to you. If you say you don't want her to live with us, I'll understand. I realize that Martha will not replace your mother, but I think you should give her a chance," the man said. "That's wonderful. I'm all for Martha living with us. You should know how often we called each other while I was in the village. I can tell you in confidence that I was more in touch with her than with you. But don't be offended," Juliet said. "Carrot. Top, my carrot. Top, how happy you make me now. When I go to the hospital and they tell me you're okay, I'll be over the moon," he said quietly. A couple of days later, Jacob took his daughter to the clinic, and the girl was admitted to the hospital for a few days. After the examination, the doctor said in amazement, "I cannot understand anything. You say that the girl was not taken to Washington, but she has excellent tests. And I can also add that not everything is fine, but it's a matter of time. You surprise me in a good way." When Jacob heard these words, he mentally thanked God and Martha's grandmother. Now the man wanted to sign with his beloved as soon as possible. And soon the couple filed an application in the registry office, and a month later they signed and began to live together. 7 years passed after that. During this time, Martha gave birth to Jacob, a girl who was named in honor of her grandmother Sharon, and then a boy, Tony. Juliet began to call Martha only Mom and took great pleasure in helping the woman babysit her younger sister and brother. Jacob at this time already had his own service station and was preparing to purchase another one. The man was happy with his life, as Juliet, thanks to the gift, and Sharon was able to overcome the disease, as well as he had a beloved wife and 2 more children. Jacob was walking along the shop floor when suddenly he was called by name. He turned around and saw a red-haired woman looking at him. He stopped and looked at the stranger with a surprised look, and then suddenly realized that in front of him was his former spouse, Julianne. The woman approached him and said, "Jacob, have I changed so much?" The man asked, "I came in here to warm up, and the kid pointed you out to me and said you were the owner of the service station, and I didn't believe him. So I called out to you. Are you really the boss? How could that happen? You were a starving man back in the day. You smelled of diesel, and now you own a service station," Julianne said. "Time flies and everything in this life changes. But why are you here?" Jacob said. "Let's talk somewhere because we're not strangers," the woman said. "I think we've been strangers for a long time, since you left me with my little girl. But well, let's not rake up the past. Let's go to my office and talk. I'll tell you about how I became the owner of the service station," Jacob said. They went into the man's office, where Julianne's ex-husband invited her to sit down in a chair, and he put the electric kettle on to boil. As soon as the water boiled, Jacob poured coffee and offered Julianne a hot drink before speaking. "It's not your coffee. I remember that you like to drink only brewed coffee, and I still have a habit of brewing it from a can. But now I think that you are not interested in it because you are not interested in it because you ask too many questions in the shop. I can tell you right away that I became the owner of the service station, thanks to your father. At first, your mother helped me financially. although I was against it, but Sabrina insisted on it. And then my daughter had health problems. But I think that this story can be omitted, as you are not really interested in it. So with your permission, I will continue further. I needed money for treatment, and your mother transferred the amount, but I was helped by a witch doctor. It was my wife's grandmother. Now this woman is no longer alive. After I found out that my daughter did not need money for treatment, I tried to return the money to your mother, but unfortunately I found out that Sabrina died of a heart attack. And then came your father, who gave me a large sum of money and apologized. I refused because I was offended by him. But I can say that he made me understand why he didn't trust me at the time. And you know, I understood him. And I can also add that the last argument was for me to take the money. It was your mother's will. She asked to help me and their granddaughter. That's my whole tale about the acquisition of the service station. There's no fairy tales or anything. I told you how it was. About you honestly did not want to know anything, as I for a long time after the divorce could not forget you, but it is already in the past, as I have a wife and now 3 children, for which I am grateful to fate. And now it is your turn to tell why you go to warm yourself at the service station. Because you have to live happily with your lover, to whom she left. What am I supposed to tell you? My so-called lover fell in love with my sister. She said yes, and I was no longer needed. I was just shown the door. My father gave me some money so I could buy an apartment here in the U.S. And here I am now. And I also now remember my mother's words that everything comes back boomerang, so it happened, said the woman sadly. And then the door to the office opened, and then the door to the office opened, and entered a woman with 2 small children and a red-haired girl. The visitor turned to the man. You are obviously late again today, and we decided to take you home with the children. The man with a smile looked at those who entered. It was his family. And he said to Julianne, "Meet my beloved wife and our children." Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.